Stan wakes up surprised and heads outside to find his car damaged and leaves a thank you note on the car next to his. We see him waiting in the train station to get to work but decides to get on the train on the opposite side. After reaching there, he calls in sick to work and end up at the beach. He makes his first entry on his journal, which he finds some pages ripped off. After that, he digs for his lost treasure and finds a woman following him. He avoids her but later finds her sitting across him in the coffee shop. She adds her own liquid in the mug and the man watches her drink it. He writes in his journal that he fell in love with that woman, and sometime later, the woman finds him watching her at the train station, but he turns back on noticing her notice him. But still, she proceeds to wave at him and he tries to return the greeting. They get on the train and she starts a conversation with him. We learn that they both are headed to the same destination and the woman questions whether they have met before. Further conversing, they learn that they frequent a bookstore where she suggests they might have met before, and since she changes her hair color often, he might not have recognized her. Also, we learn her name is Clementine and his name is Joel. She gets too comfortable with him and he feels a little uncomfortable with how fast she is moving ahead with him. He lets her know that, of course, and soon we see Joel going on his own only for him see her walking alone. He offers her a ride and she accepts to tag along with him. He drops her at her house and she invites him in for a drink. Clementine wants to know more about Joel, but he mentions his life is anything but boring. Shockingly, she offers to marry him. Taken aback by her impulsiveness, he leaves her and gets back home safe and sound. Anyway, he ends up calling her and they end up heading to a frozen lake. She talks him into joining her to lie down stargazing. He opens up to her and by the time they return it's morning and Joel takes her back home. But Clementine asks if he could take her over to his place and gets down to get some of her stuff. Right then, a random guy knocks on the car window and asks if he needs any help but walks away soon. Change of scene now. We see Joel going back home but he is followed by some guys in a van. As he collects his deliveries, his neighbor Frank asks if he has any plans with Clementine for this Valentine's Day. Joel keeps it short and goes inside. He takes a pill from one of the packages and sees the van waiting outside. Joel turns off the lights and ends up fainting soon after. The guys in the van get out to take their equipments from the van and enter Joel's place. We go back a couple days ago when Joel complains to Rob and Carrie about how he prepared a Valentine's Day gift for Clementine, but when he went to find her, she behaved like she did not know him at all and was making out with some other guy. Carrie advises Joel to see this a sign and leave her, but Rob proceeds to take an envelope from the drawer. Carrie tells him that is not a good idea and argues with Rob, but soon gives up and heads upstairs, leaving Joel to Rob. Rob opens the envelope and hands over a card to Joel. We see a shocked Joel read the card from Lacuna Inc., stating that Clementine has erased Joel from her memory and avoid mentioning their relationship to her. Joel takes the card to find Lacuna. The receptionist, Mary, is on the phone, while many other cards, just like the one he has, is being printed. Mary asks Joel to fill out a form and takes him inside. Dr. Howard apologizes for having him see the card, but Joel thinks it's a hoax. Howard mentions that Clementine approached them since she wasn't happy and wanted to move on. Later, Joel can be seen ranting to Rob and Carrie about what the doctor told him, and Carrie mentions how Clementine is impulsive and she just decided to erase him from her memories. Joel does not take it well, and he barges in Lacuna. Mary tries to stop him, but Howard takes him inside. Howard explains for the memory to be erased, Joel needs to take out everything related to Clementine from his home, and their technicians will create a mapping of their timeline and perform the procedure that night, and the next morning he will wake up to a new him with no memory of Clementine. Joel packs everything and takes them to Lacuna, and Dr. Howard introduces Joel to Stan, their most experienced technician. Howard records Joel's consent and guides Joel to cover everything from how he met Clementine until his very last memory of her. Finishing that, Howard does some regular checkup, and Stan takes over Joel to start with their initial procedure to map the timeline in his brain. He takes out the items Joel brought one by one and asks him to focus on the memories associated with each of them. As this happens, we get back to see the guys from the van and enter Joel's house are Stan and his assistant Patrick. And Patrick is the guy who knocked on Joel's car window when he dropped off Clementine. Stan feels something wrong with the connections and asks Patrick to check them, and as the procedure begins, Joel visualizes the happenings while he was at Lacuna earlier that day. Patrick walks around the place and Stan asks him to stay focused. The first memory to be erased is when Joel saw Clementine for the last time. This is when Clementine came home late and informed that she wrecked his car, and Joel said that she might have even slept with a stranger, since that's how she proceeds to make someone like her. Hearing him say say that, Clementine gets angry and leaves. On the outside, Patrick mentions that he got a girlfriend now, and that it is Clementine who got her memories erased a few days ago. We get back inside Joel's mind to find him following Clementine, saying that everything's over, since he is deleting her. But Joel can hear Stan and Patrick talking outside, and Joel jumps between his memories with Clementine, but he can also hear Stan and Patrick talking in his house. In the next memory, Clementine wants to have a baby, but Joel feels she is not ready to take care of a baby. They fight over it, and coming back, Mary comes to find Stan and Patrick. She pours Stan a drink and makes a toast for poor Joel having his memories wiped. At this time, Joel is going through his next memory where he and Clementine went out for dinner, but this time Patrick calls Clementine and Joel hears Clementine on the phone with Patrick. While having dinner, Joel leans over to find himself standing before Clementine when he found her with the other guy, and Joel tries to see the man's face, but it is not possible. Patrick asks Stan for permission to leave to meet her, and Mary feels comfortable with him leaving too. At this time, Joel in the memory hears Patrick calling Clementine as Tangerine, the name Joel used to call her, and Stan explains to Mary about learning this information from Joel's journal. Patrick reaches Clementine's home. She is in tears and asks him join her to go see the frozen lake. Patrick calls Stan to inform that he won't be joining them for the rest of the night. Stan gives the go, and before they leave, Patrick looks through the pages from Joel's journal to learn about their time at the frozen lake, and he also hands her the gift Joel left behind. Clementine thanks Patrick for such a thoughtful gift, and at this time, we see Joel in the memory when Clementine shared her vulnerable side. Before this memory fades away, Joel tries his best to hold back to stop it, but the process moves on. After this, Joel goes back to the time they shared at the frozen lake, and after that, he sees Clementine being taken away from him. He asks for it to stop and not make him forget Clementine completely. So, Joel takes Clementine in his memory and runs through his other memories and not lets go off her. Finally, he ends up with the doctor who lets Joel know that they can do nothing for him now, and he finds Patrick in the office and asks the doctor who he was. Joel recognizes his voice and tells the doctor that he stole his stuff and is using them to take his place with Clementine. After this, we see Patrick repeats what he read from the journal to Clementine on the frozen lake, but Clementine gets back up and wants to go back home. Back in the memory lane, Joel is apologizing to Clementine for erasing her, and she tells him to wake himself up. With no belief, Joel lays down and tries to open his eyes, but it actually works. Joel tells Clementine that it worked, and she tells him to take her somewhere they cannot be found and stay there till the morning. Joel thinks about the time when he was a kid and it soon starts raining inside the house. Clementine takes the role of his neighbor, and he cries under the table asking for his mommy. At this moment, Stan wakes up to hear the machine beeping and realizes the procedure stopped on its own. Mary freaks out and Stan tries to figure this himself, but she tells him to call Howard. With no other way, Stan calls him and gives him Joel's address. Coming back to the memory, Joel informs Clementine about Patrick taking his place, and at the same time, we see the real Clementine driving Patrick back home. Soon, Howard reaches Joel's place and questions what Mary is doing there. She tries her best to come up with something, but with matters at hand, Howard goes on to find the problem. In the memory, Joel and Clementine are taking a bath in the sink, and as soon as Howard locates Joel, Clementine in the memory disappears, and Joel starts to drown in the sink. This leads to the real Joel waking up, and having seen this for the first time, Howard gives Joel a sleeping drug. Joel gets pulled back to the timeline, and Stan gets control over the process. As Howard gets up to leave, Stan loses sight of Joel in the map, since Joel is resisting to let go of Clementine. However, Howard manages to get the process running, and even though Joel is forced across one memory to another, he tries hard to hold on to Clementine, but the procedure overtakes and starts erasing the memories. With things back on track, Stan heads outside to get some air, and Mary tries chatting with Howard. She ends up kissing him and apologizes, but Howard advises that they cannot be doing so. Stan watches Howard being close to Mary, and right then, a car pulls in, and Howard's wife comes out to notice them inside. Stan sees her and honks the car to let alert Howard. However, she beats up Stan and starts going back. By this time, Howard gets out along with Mary, who says it was her fault, but Howard's wife tells Mary that it's not her first time doing so. Confused with her reply, Mary asks Howard, who reveals that it is true, and she too had her memories wiped once. Mary gets back to the office to find her file. She plays the cassette to learn that she and the doctor did have a history, and he talked her into having her memories erased. Back to Joel. He is now along with Rob and Carrie. He realizes this is the memory where he met Clementine for the first time. She approached him first, and they felt an instant connection. A while later, she sneaks inside the beach house, but Joel doesn't like getting pulled told along her impulsive behavior. He suggests they leave and the house starts breaking apart. He mentions that he actually left back then, scared by her being crazy, but this time he doesn't want to leave her. Clementine walks towards him and asks him to spend these last moments together, and finally he tells her that he loves her. Following this, Joel gets a flash of all his memories, and Howard closes his laptop saying that the procedure is complete. Stan removes the equipments and clears their traces. They leave soon, and Joel wakes up to the moment we saw him at the beginning. With the job done, Stan leaves to find Mary, who is emptying the office with her stuff. Mary asks if he knew about her and Howard. Stan mentions he had his doubts, but he never knew about any of this. He lets her know that he truly loves her, but Mary leaves, and we can see her car is filled with all the case files. We get back to where we left off, where Clementine went to get her stuff, and as she comes out, she takes the letter she got as well. Joel takes her and she opens the envelope to find a letter inside. We find the letter is from Mary, and she has addressed the same to all patients of Lacuna. Mary goes over the details of their memories being wiped, and Clementine finds a cassette in the cover. She plays it, and her, as well as Joel, are shocked to hear his name mentioned in there. With the content of the cassette, he stops the car and asks Clementine to leave. She heads back home to find Patrick waiting for her, but she tells him to piss off. Sometime later, she heads back to Joel's place where she runs into their neighbor Frank. She heads up to find Joel listening to his cassette, and they both realize what happened. He apologizes to her, and they hear Joel ranting about Clementine. At one point, she could not handle what she's hearing and gets up to leave. However, Joel follows her asking for time, and with them being strangers right now, he suggests they start over. This does sound crazy enough after what they had done, and they laugh it off. Sometime later, we see them together on the beach they met for the first time, and we can see that they have come to a conclusion to restart their relationship. Let me know in the comments if you would opt for erasing your memory about someone if you had the option to, and I shall meet you with another story like this. And until then, this is your host for Movie Recap signing off.